Hi, I'm Tally, this is Farrell, and we are Bored of It. And today we're going to be reviewing Maracaibo. And we've donned our finest tropical and nautical gear today. Because Maracaibo is a swashbuckling game for 1 to 4 players where you sail around the board with the aim of becoming the best mercenary ship in all of the Caribbean.
And this is one of the most recent games to break into Board Game Geek's top 100. And this is not surprising because it's a sequel of sorts to the 2016 game Great Western Trail. It's by the same designer and it's quickly become one of our personal favourites.
It's made by the same designer and in many aspects plays in an extremely similar manner to Great Western. In both games you move around the board in a loop, interacting with one of the many symbols as you go. In Great Western, the aim of the game is to improve your castle head with every loop, whereas in Maracaibo, the name of the game is to improve your ship.
However, it's unfair to infer that they're the same game because Maracaibo is different and it does bring new ideas to the table. But before we get into how it does that, just like to say thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please like it below, and also we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to our channel with the red button below, especially if you want to see more board game reviews.
You'll start in Havana and begin each turn with deciding whether to move your ship between 1 and 7 spaces. If you decide to stop in a city, shown here, you can discard a card with the matching symbol to do a ship upgrade, and you do that by removing one of these discs. And when you've removed both discs, you either unlock a one-time bonus or a new action.
Then you'll do the city action, and these change from city to city. If you stop in a village, you can do village actions, and these include discarding cards from your hand to gain money, gaining money, or playing a card from your hand by playing its cost and activating the effects of that card. Now, the more the game goes on, you're going to be unlocking more village actions on your player mat as you do these ship upgrades, so you'll have more options available to you. And also, the further you move your ship before you stop in a village, the more village actions you can take.
When a player reaches this space, the round ends immediately, regardless of where the other players are on the board. The game lasts for 4 rounds, so you'll loot the board 4 times.
And while the goal of the game is to become the best mercenary in the Caribbean, actually the player who wins is obviously the player who gets the most victory points. And this is a game where the victory points come at you from every angle. Anything you do, you're probably getting victory points. But the main areas they come from in terms of your final score are going to be the cards you have in play and the amount of influence you have with the different nations on this track. Every card has a cost to play it, but most of them are worth victory points at the end of the game. But also they'll probably help you in other ways. A lot of cards will help you move up a victory point income tracker, which is scored at the end of every round.
Gaining influence with the nations is one of the main aspects of this game, and one that is totally new when compared with Great Western Trail. As you travel, you'll have the chance to do combat, where you essentially spend combat points on this tracker here in order to either gain influence in the nations or place an influence cube on the board. And at the end of the game, where you are on the influence tracker is multiplied by the amount of empty spaces in the influence area, and it can gain you a boatload of victory points.
Another thing you have is your Explorer track. This kind of takes the place of the trains in Great Western Trail. We have an explorer, and in certain spaces or actions you can move him certain spaces, and every space on this explorer track is a reward. So you're going to, as you move in, you're constantly getting rewards, and once you cross over certain boundaries, so you explore more, you get bigger bonuses. One thing you can do are quests, and these are pretty simple. You just have these tiles here, and when you stop at a port where there is one, or your explorer stops where there is one, you just trade whatever the quest needs for the reward. Drop that one. So it could be 2 tobaccos or 2 corns, and then you gain a little man and some victory points. There's a lot of different ones. And while we haven't comprehensively covered every mechanic in the game, those are the basics. And what we like is that none of these mechanics on their own are overwhelming, so when they're all brought together, the game isn't that difficult to learn. And another great thing in terms of learning the game is the gameplay itself, because you go around the board once, you stop, reset, and then you go again. And by the end of the first go round, you'll have pretty much experienced all the actions and gameplay, so you'll know what to do. And we've found that new players are pretty much sorted and know what they're doing by the second and third round. And this just makes it enjoyable for everyone. I have to say, this is just a really fun game. It's just fun to sail around the map, stopping in whichever port you want, getting little bonuses, gaining some influence with the nations. You buy some cards and then you improve your ship. You get these one-time bonuses, and it's just all these mechanisms link into each other really well. It's just really well balanced, fun, there's a lot of variety in what you're doing. And it's just a pretty good sailing game, pretty good pirate game, just fun. So one thing you should be aware of is that these cards will probably give you analysis paralysis. This is because they can be played either by discarding them to upgrade your ship, or just put them in play to get the effect. And you kind of come to these decisions where you're like, I want to play this card because it's going to give me these bonuses, but then you might be coming up on a quest in your next port, and this card also has a telescope, and it's one of the two you have, and you need to discard both of them to get that quest and the immediate effect, which will help you. So you kind of, you sit there and you scratch your head. And also this comes in just the cards themselves, because there's a lot of similar yet different cards. And you can kind of sit there looking at them both and just go, oh no, these are similar, which one should I play? I can only afford one. And this contributes to the analysis paralysis. But what I will say is that it's never in a bad way, it's in a fun way. Because in this game, it's never that you make a bad choice, it's just that you make a choice and it's part of your ship's journey.
Another great thing is that you don't need to focus too far ahead. The turns are relatively quick for a game this size, and realistically, you only focus on what's up next on the map. So you're only focusing what you immediately want to do, rather than planning rounds and turns ahead like in other games. Because of the looping structure, you'll return to each location, which means you can focus on your immediate wants and needs. Also, players can't be blocked off from locations by other players, which in a sense de-stresses the game and allows the player to focus on the here and now rather than trying to figure out how to counteract the actions of other players. Now, the game has a great theme and pretty much nails it with the gameplay. But man, do we wish the components were just a little bit nicer.
And we don't mean in terms of quality. The quality is great, the cards are good, the wooden tokens are strong. And we mean in terms of look and appearance. They're very similar to Great Western Trail in that they're kind of ugly. But whereas in Great Western Trail, they kind of lent a little sense of charm because it kind of went with the theme. It made you think of cattle ranches and barns. Here it just doesn't go. It's actually quite jarring because it's supposed to be this fun, vibrant Caribbean. And it just, I don't know, it just distracts you a little bit.
It looks like they've just picked the worst shades of every colour for the player tokens, and the ship upgrade tokens are literally the colour of poop. Kind of just detracts from everything that is nice about the game, in our opinion. Also, the ship upgrade tokens are kind of an annoying system in general as a marker for something. You have to stack two together, but it's pretty annoying when you go to reach for the top one or just accidentally knock your player mat and the other stacked ones fall over. The rules do suggest to stack them side by side, but then the player mat becomes a bit of a mess and it can be confusing in some instances. However, we only mean this physically, as the system and game mechanic, gameplay-wise, is pretty solid, no complaints.
One of our favourite things about this game is the legacy elements. If you choose to, you can include the legacy tiles and the cards. And now the cards tell a little story, and the tiles will impact gameplay and alter the game board. And with the story, it's pretty basic. So if you miss a few sessions, it's not like you're going to feel like you're left out or you've missed a lot, but it is fun enough that it elevates the gameplay. And what we also like is that a lot of time you'll have these choices from the story and all the players will vote on what to do. And this actually creates a branching storyline. And Another great thing is that sometimes the tiles you put down on the board will require players to all cooperate to move the story along. The legacy tiles will alter the game board, keeping it fresh round to round and game to game. Perhaps a hazardous storm will appear and it will be more difficult to cross a certain area, or maybe your actions will help a small village grow into a bustling city, giving you more gameplay options. Another thing that is greatly appreciated is that they provide a specially coloured bag to store the components you're currently using so you'll never lose your place. This is pretty cool and it's really appreciated, to be honest. And don't care about legacy components? Don't want to play with them? No problem. You can just play the base game as well.
Now, moving on to the influence tracker. The system is a fun mechanism that provides a lot of strategy to the game. You have to balance how far along you move on the tracker versus how strong each country is on the board. It provides some interesting dilemmas as you never have to commit to one country. The combat tiles also help to move this along, as they can punish you for aligning with the strongest country or give you a bonus for helping the weakest, making you change your plans on the fly.
However, this definitely could have been improved, particularly in the placing of cubes on the board. Because you see, as one of your main combat actions, you can place cubes on these flags and also swap them out. And this is fine because there's a space for them. But an action on your ship that you can unlock, and you probably will unlock, is to put these cubes on villages. And on villages, there is no space for the cubes. And this just creates a giant mess because you might have ships and people and then these cubes. And it just becomes a mess to look at and to kind of count up and sort out.
The board is crying out for a white outline or something next to the villages so you can place the cubes. For example, the space here is relating to the city, but could just as easily be for the village space here. And just having an outline or somewhere to place the cube would easily solve that.
Also, when you remove the cubes from the board, they don't go back in the tracker, they go out of the game. And we really feel like they missed a trick here, because I think it would have been a lot more fun if they went back on the tracker here, because then you can kind of have this fun tug of war between different players, or hamper a player that's got too strong. Because you see, what happens is the strongest nation on the board gets extra points at the end. So instead of this being 3 times wherever the player is, it would be 5 times wherever the player is. And because these cubes don't go back on here, when a player gets to the top level and that country is the strongest, there becomes no point in trying to fight it. You might as well just spend all of your combat points to go up that country's popularity and then equal that player, because you can't really make them lose any points. But if the cubes went back on the tracker, then you could stop them, and either you could stop someone from getting too far ahead and too powerful, or you can just, kind of have this fun back and forth, and it becomes a bit more useful to be able to swap these cubes out.
And because they don't go back on the track, you can't instantly tell which country is the strongest. And combined with the mess of cubes that we mentioned earlier, it can be painful to count up. So we really feel like a tracker indicating how strong a country is and how big a presence they have on the board would have been really helpful here.
Although we've had some complaints about the game, you might have noticed that these are almost entirely cosmetic. I think it really illustrates the strength of the gameplay in this game, that these complaints don't hamper our enjoyment in any way. I mean, this is a game that's very quickly broken into Board Game Geek's top 100, and it's rapidly rising. It's become a firm favourite of ours, and I think, Tally, it's even in your top 5.
It is tough to choose a top 5, but yeah, I would say it's up there. It keeps you constantly engaged as you hop in your seat, waiting to get to the next port, whilst charming you with its legacy aspects like the engaging story and the legacy tiles, which change the board state from game to game.
I think this is definitely a must-own from us, and you should, try to find it in a board game cafe, get it, go try it out, whatever.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and we'd absolutely love it if you could subscribe to our channel to be notified when we post our board game content.
And see more dogs.
And see more dogs.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.